Taiwan's ally Guatemala mulls trade ties with China, a move that could affect its relations with Taipei. The U.S. is helping Taiwan arm a fleet of fighter jets with advanced weapons. Climate change is threatening Taiwan's homegrown strawberries, but we meet one farmer finding new ways to protect his crops. Plus,
nowadays, if there is a gathering where my relatives ask me those questions, I'm just going to tell them the truth.
We meet someone from the LGBTQ+ community who's preparing for difficult family reunions over the lunar holiday. Hello and welcome. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Eric Gao. Amid a potential blow to Taiwan, Guatemala's foreign minister says his country is considering strengthening trade ties with China. Our reporter Sally Jensen is in Taipei. Sally, what's the latest?
Yes, a huge blow and renewed doubts over the loyalty of one of Taiwan's biggest diplomatic allies, Guatemala, which says it's seeking to open trade relations with China. And Guatemala has recently said in the past, its new president has said that it would seek to establish ties with Beijing over Taipei, and new comments from the country's foreign minister have renewed these concerns. Let's take a look at what he said.
Vamos a seguir trabajando con Taiwán en los niveles en los que ya lo veníamos haciendo, que no podemos ignorar el peso y la potencia que representa China en muchos campos. Y en base a eso es que tendríamos el interés, por supuesto, de acercarnos a ellos y de tratar de desarrollar algún vínculo alrededor del tema comercio de manera institucional.
He added that this is not a switch in diplomatic ties and that this is not an ambush on Taiwan or the US, which informally supports Taiwan.
So another ally is reevaluating ties with China. What does this move mean for Taiwan?
Yes, China has been trying to win over Taiwan's 12 remaining diplomatic allies with access to its huge market, with the tiny Pacific island of Nauru being the latest to do so, and speculation over Tuvalu possibly being the next one. And an expert I spoke to earlier said that this is causing a cascade of concern for Taiwan. And, you know, China is playing its cards strongly against the country. Now, Taiwan's diplomatic allies are highly valuable to it, as they represent it in various international organizations and bodies like the UN. And although Taiwan has not responded to the comments from Guatemala's foreign minister, it has said in the past that it will not engage in the sort of checkbook diplomacy that we're seeing from China. So while this is not a switch in diplomatic ties, this does represent a huge blow to Taiwan's image abroad. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Sally. That was Sally Jensen reporting from Taipei. Now, the U.S. is Taiwan's largest source of weapons and military training. And with China increasing its threats around Taiwan, that's prompting Washington to offer some of its most advanced systems and tactics. Jaime Ocon explains.
Taiwan is on track to have one of the largest fleets of US-made F-16 fighter jets in the world, with more than 200 of the aircraft to be delivered by 2026. Part of this buildup is because of the increase in Chinese warplanes and ships operating around the country on almost a daily basis. On Tuesday, Taiwan's defense ministry reported 25 Chinese military aircraft flying near its borders. 13 of those planes breached the country's ADIZ, a defensive buffer zone that is not sovereign airspace. To equip the F-16s, the country is investing in new weapons, such as this one, the AGM-154. AGM stands for Air-to-Ground Missile. It uses built-in wings to glide and can hit targets on the ground or at sea. U.S. defense contractors are now producing 50 of these missiles for Taiwan, which could help prevent a blockade if China tries to take over the country.
Now, in a blockade situation, that actually air-to-ground missiles become a little more interesting because, okay, let's say you have a bunch of ships. Well, now if they're sea capable, they can actually target, ships and take out blockades. The problem is though that like once you do that, you're into a shooting war.
While these missiles are some of the most advanced in the world, the sale is more about demonstrating the U.S.'s commitment to helping Taiwan defend itself.
台湾获得这个 AGM-154之后呢，其实让空军的 F16机队呢，它有能力去打击福建的第一线的机场港口。这些飞弹其实并不足额但是它有一个象征意义说，美国军方呢总算首肯把这个算是攻击性的飞弹给了台湾了。
Aside from the new hardware, Taiwan also relies heavily on the U.S. for military training. U.S. Special Forces instructors are reportedly also in Taiwan, helping train troops in the country's outlying islands. The soldiers receiving this training would be among the first lines of defense in any invasion.
绿扁帽就是防守型的这种特种部队它是用来反制敌人渗透。那特别是跟我国的这两栖侦察营结合。
New aircraft, missiles, and enhanced training are all part of Taiwan's effort to prevent China from invading the country. And Taiwan is betting that its largest provider of weapons and military assistance will continue providing its assistance. Dolphin Chen and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
Now, U.S. Special Forces training Taiwanese soldiers would have big implications. For more on what this means, Jaime Okan spoke to Raymond Guo, security analyst with the RAND Corporation.
There are reports of U.S. Special Forces training Taiwanese soldiers, and I just want to ask first about the significance of that, and also, do we know what this training is?
Sure. I'll have to admit, I don't actually know what the training regimen is like. I imagine some of that's also classified both on the Taiwanese side and the United States' side. But the very fact that it's Special Forces, Green Berets are going out there is an important sign as well. I mean, this is, they're crack ground forces, crack infantry, which would be needed in any kind of sort of invasion or counter invasion scenario. And they're Special Forces, right? They're trained to, work behind enemy lines and also in particular train local forces to respond to them. The Special Forces do train in asymmetric warfare, and in particular are training other countries. Like, if you are not able to get the supplies into Taiwan, if you're not able to get persistent, if you don't have the gas to fuel up an Abrams tank, well, what do? Well, you have to rely upon, a long logistics tail, kind of short resource consumption, and that's exactly what asymmetric strategies do. And so the Special Forces are kind of top notch at that.
Now, there's no exact number of how many trainers there are in Taiwan, but if you had to take a guess, how many do you think there are, and how does this training program work?
Right now, I think the number, the last I checked, was something like 200, maybe 400 trainers. It's not really that many. These guys are not going to go out there and directly train the Taiwanese military on their own because there's just not enough of them. So what they're doing instead is sort of a training of trainers kind of approach. They'll train the Taiwanese trainers who go out and then diffuse those lessons throughout the rest of the Taiwanese military. The reason why I say this is more important is because, here you're seeing the United States really get into the nuts and bolts of an asymmetric strategy. So the U.S., D.C., London, other places feel like the asymmetric strategy is the way to go. And now they're actually giving the Taiwanese military the software, if you would, to be able to actually implement it.
Starting this year, Taiwan is going to receive a whole bunch of equipment like drones, tanks, missile systems. And with all that hardware coming in, what happens now? Should Taiwan be focusing on maybe the software and how to train to use these systems?
So you have all this hardware, but how do you make sure that they can actually be used? How do you make sure they don't shoot each other down, for example? There are deconfliction issues. How do you know where everybody is and can actually coordinate their fire? And so, I think you're absolutely right that with this hardware coming, it's actually much more important now to actually get the software online. Can the soldiers and the troops do what they need to do? Can they coordinate with each other? And so there's a $300 million agreement to make a purchase late last year on the L16 system, which I think is absolutely essential to this. It's a communication system that will allow them to actually coordinate their forces in an effective manner.
That was our reporter Jaime Okan speaking with security analyst Raymond Guo with the RAND Corporation. Taiwan's electricity company has denied speculation that it plans to raise prices by as much as 25% to stem major losses. The state-run Taipower told TaiwanPlus that any decision on pricing comes from a review committee tied to the economy ministry. Taiwan has some of the cheapest electricity in the world, but Taipower has seen over $14 billion in losses in the last 2 years. A price hike is likely to first impact industry-heavy users like chip makers, which are a key pillar of Taiwan's economy. Meanwhile, China's economy appears to be in increasingly bad shape, with tumbling stock markets the latest in a series of setbacks. The situation has affected the mood of many Chinese people getting ready for the Lunar Year holiday, but it could have wider consequences for the region, including here in Taiwan. Jeremy Olivier has this report.
Falling prices, plummeting trade figures, rising unemployment, a worsening real estate crisis, and now big drops in local stock markets. China's economy was expected to make a big recovery after it lifted harsh COVID restrictions in 2022. But the recent numbers paint a bleak picture for officials, who are now hoping to keep things from completely spiraling. Even the country's citizens are feeling the squeeze, as layoffs and pay cuts hit workers across multiple industries.
感觉2023年挺难的，因为工厂的效益不是特别好，然后呢，整个大环境也比较差，感觉比往年都难。
比如说我们那个公司关了很多连锁店。
OK。
对，然后的话也有在裁员，工资的话也稍微有一点影响。
其实保险行业都在裁员，在就是优化，在减薪。核心的逻辑实际是我个人感觉是供需关系的问题。
GDP did pick up last year, growing 5.2%, a rise from the 3% seen in 2022. But that hasn't been enough to reverse declining sentiment among businesses and consumers. The grim outlook has led foreign investors to pull out in droves from China's markets, which were sent tumbling last month. The SSE Composite Index, which tracks all stocks traded on the Shanghai Stock Exchange, dropped to its lowest point in several years amid signs of panic selling. Though it's made a weak recovery, analysts say the big issue is real estate, brought back into focus by the recent downfall of developer Evergrande. The property giant sent China's economy into a tailspin when it defaulted on its debts in 2021. And in late January, a Hong Kong court ordered Evergrande to liquidate, dealing a further blow to confidence in China's real estate market.
So this is the key thing that affecting the stock market itself, because as we all know, the real estate market, the negative wealth effects may affect the consumer behavior and expenditure. So this is maybe one thing to drag down the economy in the longer term.
China's Securities Commission has said it will step in to stabilize markets, including cracking down on things like market manipulation and insider trading. But other issues with China's economy, like slumping imports and exports, could impact Taiwan, which relies heavily on its trade with China. A significant number of foreign investors in China are also Taiwanese, further exposing Taiwan's economy to the stutters happening across the strait. Analysts say this could drag down economic growth in Taiwan.
We're still talking about 35% of exports going to China, and 50% of FDI are also in China as well. I think if we continue to see a deceleration of economic growth in China in, let's say, the next decade, from right now around 5% to 4%, I wouldn't be surprised that we will see Taiwan's GDP growth decelerate by basically around 0.4%.
Taiwan has also been trying to reduce its economic reliance on China, which claims sovereignty over Taiwan and frequently uses economic and political pressure to try to achieve its goal of taking the country. But the ripple effects of a continuing slowdown could reach even those countries, like Taiwan, that have worked to de-risk from the world's second largest economy. Joseph Wu and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Families across the world will gather this week to celebrate the Lunar New Year. Many young people look forward to the chance to reconnect with family, though some dread the inevitable questions about relationships, salaries, and children. Those dinner table conversations can be even more awkward for LGBTQ+ people. Reese Ayers has more.
The Lunar New Year holiday is a time for families to come together. But for some, heading home can be stressful.
The last time I saw them, the extended family, it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. At the time, I always have to somehow manage something very gender neutral.
Greta is a trans woman. Her parents know about her identity, but she hasn't directly told her extended family. And like many other young people in Taiwan, she often faces awkward questions at the New Year dinner table.
About your job, your salary, also whether you're single and who you're dating, why don't you have a girlfriend, why don't you have a boyfriend, and why is that you don't have children?
For LGBTQ+ people, these kinds of questions can be even more uncomfortable, as they often assume a person's preferences or identity, a topic Greta still butts heads with her father on.
He has this idea of a good daughter, which is like good at cooking, doing house chores. So he's like, well, you can't pick and choose and be like more like a boy socially at home, and then you said that you want to be a daughter.
But this year, Greta says she's no longer willing to put on a facade.
Basically, I let them know nowadays if there is a gathering where my relatives ask me those questions, I'm just going to tell them the truth.
Taiwan is considered a liberal country for LGBTQ+ people, particularly since legalizing same-sex marriage in 2019. But conservative values still pose difficulties for queer people at home and across society.
Based on our research, we do find out that transgender people still live in a more difficult situation in Taiwan. So they face difficulties facing binary institutions, regulations in daily life, in the healthcare settings, and also in the workplace.
As thousands of other young queer people around Taiwan get ready for the holidays, like Greta, they're bracing themselves for awkward conversations and preparing to defend their identities. Justin Wu, Eason Chen, and Reese Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, how Taiwan scientists are keeping fish on the table, and all at a good price. Stay tuned.
This could be the world's cleanest factory. They take silicon and stack billions of circuits and transistors on it. Their mission, to add billions more on chips that are always getting smaller. In a world where everything depends on computing power, tomorrow is being created right here, inside this mega factory.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A huge storm has killed at least 3 people in the U.S. state of California and left more than 600,000 people without power. The weather system, known as an atmospheric river, is packing hurricane-force winds and is triggering mudslides and flooding. Evacuation orders have been issued in some areas, with around half a year's worth of rain expected to fall in 24 hours. Forecasters say the life-threatening floods could continue into Tuesday. Facing ever-growing climate threats, Taiwan's agriculture needs to find ways to adapt. Sally Jensen went to Miaoli County to meet one strawberry farmer who's taking a risk and going organic.
Carefully inspecting his fruit, Jan Yiqiang took over the family's strawberry farm from his father. But like many others here in Taiwan's Miaoli County, Jan's livelihood is threatened by rising temperatures.
现在在我们台湾来讲的话，尾雕病好像没办法根治，应该是气候，我们要把气候先慢慢的把它再回到以前的那个气候，不要让气候越来越恶劣。
One of his varieties, the Meifeng, has been hit by pests which proliferate in warmer weather. Over the decades, rising temperatures have almost eliminated the heat-sensitive fengxiang, formerly the most common variety, in the small town of Dahu. This is Dahu in north-central Taiwan, the country's strawberry capital. Almost all of the country's 6.6 million kilos of strawberries are harvested here each winter, with an annual value of around $40 million. But rising global temperatures have meant that winters here are getting warmer, and farmers have seen their yields plummet.
Ye Zhenhao is a researcher at the local agricultural research station and has observed the change. He is now trying to help Dahu's strawberry farmers weather the storm.
所以我们同时也有在做一些可能栽培方法的改变，对，包括说可能设置一些遮阴或者遮雨，或者说不同的覆盖去，比较能够让田间降温的方法的一些实验。
On his wife's advice, farmer Jan went to Ye and his team to learn how to go organic. He now ferments his own fertilizer and pesticide from organic waste like fruit peel, which he says have improved his crop. He now makes extra cash from selling a new variety, a Japanese white strawberry. And this year, the old Fengxiang, which he had all but lost hope for, has made a surprising comeback.
我现在又开始要回归于它了。白草莓不是我的主打，它才是我的主打的，才是真正的草莓。
Strawberries are not Taiwan's only crop struggling against warmer temperatures. And while the threats facing the country's little red fruit grow ever bigger, farmers like Jan are finding new ways to bring hope for a sweeter future. Andy Xue and Sally Jensen in Miaoli County for TaiwanPlus.
The new legislative session will start on February 20th. The newly elected legislative speaker, Han Kuo-yu, presided over his first party consultation on Monday. That was the first day at work for Taiwan's newly installed lawmakers. Han is from the Kuomintang, which has been the main opposition party for the past 8 years. They have the most seats in the new legislature, but they don't have a majority. Han chose the 20th as a compromise between dates suggested by the three main parties. He said it would also give legislators time to rest after the upcoming Lunar New Year holiday. Taiwan's railway company is short on safety inspectors ahead of the biggest travel season of the year. And after 2 fatal crashes, victims' relatives say it's time for the company to get serious about safety. John Van Trieste reports.
Chen Yanjun is a 7-year veteran of Taiwan's railway system. She's a safety inspector and maintenance worker who trains new recruits. She's proud to be the first woman from the Greater Taipei area to do this job.
只是说你对这个东西有兴趣，那下足够的功夫，其实担任检察员对于女生来讲，并不是一件太难的事情。
But inspectors like Chen are becoming harder to find. On January 1st, Taiwan's rail company officially changed from an arm of the government to a state-owned corporation, a movement to improve safety after fatal crashes in 2018 and 2021. But a growing number of safety inspectors are choosing this transition point as their chance to retire, joining over 1,000 staff taking a voluntary retirement package. The remaining 800 inspectors are left stretched with a heavier workload, and it will be some time before fresh recruits arrive to help them.
整体进来可能要到下半年，那我们就觉得应该就是这段时间台铁应该还是要用一些额外的，不管是约聘的还是对方式来去先填补人力啦。
The government and the railway's new management have promised a revamped safety system and more oversight. But many are not convinced this is happening fast enough. An association of families of people killed in the 2021 crash are among those unhappy with the pace of change. 49 died and around 200 were injured in this collision between a train and a construction truck that had slid onto the tracks. It was Taiwan's deadliest train accident since the 1940s. Victims' families say the company hasn't made any progress or plans for reform. The new company says it needs a little more time, and outside experts are coming to help.
董事会的一个顾问单位哈，所以他会成立2月份的第2次董事会呢，会有一些由董事会来处理。
Still, Taiwan is just days away from the Lunar New Year holiday, the busiest travel season of the year. Ready or not, the first big test for the newly formed company is just down the tracks. Klein Wang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
And with Lunar New Year fast approaching, people in Taiwan are getting ready to feast. And one must-have dish on any spread is seafood. Leslie Lau looks at how science could help make one popular fish species a little more affordable and accessible.
Would you pay $100 per kilogram for a fish? People in Taiwan have no problem shelling out big for the black-throat sea perch, a deep-sea fish that's popular at Lunar New Year. Prized for its delicate texture and its high fat content, the fish is not easy to come by. Living between 100 and 600 meters below the surface, it's a tricky fish to catch. It dies easily in nets and is usually caught individually on a line. Its rarity and popularity have threatened each year's harvest, but now there might be a solution. Taiwan's agriculture ministry has successfully bred the fish artificially for the first time. By catching black-throat sea perch in the wild, then fertilizing their eggs in a lab, scientists managed to hatch 500 out of 50,000 eggs. The complicated process is a major step forward for Taiwan's aquaculture industry.
卵的成熟度也刚刚好要够，如果你不够的话，抽下去也不见得会发育啊。天时地利人和都要把握得很好。
But if the technology can be refined, it could help replenish the population of the coveted fish.
苗的培育，然后最后把它放流回大海里面去增育资源。
Black-throat sea perch are known as deep-sea rubies in Taiwan because of their red color. The nickname reflects their popularity and value. With this latest development, these precious gems of the ocean may soon reach a few more tables. Chris Ma and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for joining us here on TaiwanPlus News this evening. Grab our app or follow us on social media for more of our reports. Finally, check out these images of a new borderless art museum set to open on Friday in Tokyo. I'm Eric Gao, and we'll see you next time.
So this year, let's pray for good health and good fortune.
And from everyone here in TaiwanPlus, we're wishing you a happy year of the dragon.